Buenos días a todos. Bienvenidos una vez más a un evento de On Strategy. En este caso, estamos acompañados de Sistel y les damos la más cordial bienvenida a este evento. El día de hoy hablaremos de cómo sensibilizar y educar en tiempos de amenaza digital. Esto enfocado al ambiente laboral. Este evento va a ser llevado a cabo en idioma inglés, por eso cuentan con un botón para activar la traducción simultánea. Durante el proceso de entrevista a la doctora Mira, será necesario que si ustedes quieren contar con esta traducción, nos ayuden presionando este botón. Pues mi nombre es Aimet Pimentel y en nombre de On Strategy les doy la más cordial bienvenida a este evento. Les agradecemos como siempre que sus preguntas las pongan en el chat para que la doctora Mira las pueda contestar al final del evento en la sección de preguntas y respuestas. Asimismo, también los invitamos a que dediquen un par de minutos para contestar una encuesta que siempre nos ayuda a mejorar en estos procesos. Pues bueno, como les digo, On Strategy en colaboración con Sistel estamos también de la mano del UK Defense and Security Expert y el Department for International Trade en esta serie de eventos que estaremos transmitiendo cada 15 días para proporcionar un marco de referencia y elementos en temas de este tema tan actual que es la ciberseguridad. On Strategy, ustedes saben que somos una organización que ponemos la estrategia en el centro del corazón de las organizaciones, formulando, alineando y ejecutando planes competitivos para que las organizaciones puedan lograr alcanzar su misión, su visión, sus objetivos estratégicos en este entorno que estamos hoy viviendo. Sistel es una organización que ofrece soluciones innovadoras en ciberseguridad, haciendo uso de la inteligencia artificial para ir más allá de la prevención de ataques. Sistel es un proveedor de la corona británica y está siendo apoyado este proceso de colaboración, como les decía, con el UK Defense and Security Expert, quienes ayudan a las compañías en el Reino Unido y hacen negocios a nivel internacional. Se busca que las organizaciones puedan establecerse tanto en el Reino Unido como en otros países a través del respaldo que esta organización proporciona. Esta mañana, como les decía, tenemos el gusto de contar con la doctora Mira Sarma, que es nuestra experta. Tiene más de 20 años de experiencia en ciberseguridad e inteligencia artificial. Ha trabajado con diferentes gobiernos e instituciones privadas. Participó en la creación del CERT de la India. Participó en el primer equipo de ciberseguridad del país y ha contribuido en la Oficina de Ciencia y Tecnología del Parlamento del Reino Unido. Tiene un postdoctorado en Sistemas de la Información del Royal Holloway Universidad de Londres en UK. Bienvenida, Mira. Si quieren activar su botón de traducción simultánea a partir de este momento, estaría perfecto. Welcome, Mira. We are very happy to have you here today, and we are pleased to share with you all your knowledge, and we are grateful to have a talk with you.
Fantastic, Aimet.
So,
thank you.
welcome again.
Thank you very much, Aimet. And thank you to everybody who's taken the time off from your busy mornings to attend the session. It's very nice to see you all. So thank you for coming. Excellent.
Mira, we know that trying to make cybersecurity a job of everyone in the organization, it's a very complicated issue. And I know that we have to look for it after doing a very good training, awareness, and communication plans inside the company. But what about creating a cyber culture inside the company to take care of us? This morning, I would like to start with a question. What is the main problem that you see today regarding the way we are working from home and outside the control perimeters that companies used to have?
Thanks for that, Ahmed. I think a number of issues that we can talk about. I mean, I'll start with a very basic one. I mean, that is, if you look at the latest research, it tells us that more than 40% of the world's population is now working online. And that means that our dependence on the digital infrastructure, is greater than ever before. And because of that, there's also a very high risk of failure. So just to put it into example, I'm sitting here talking to you using my Wi-Fi connection at home, and I have here with me a spare Wi-Fi, just in case this fails, right? So there's only so much you can do to keep yourself online. But since we've moved online, that means that there's a lot of risk as well. And to give you another example, if you take the UK, when we step out of the house now, we are all carrying mobile phones. We have to, because everywhere you go, you have to use an app. You have to connect to the NHS, which is a National Health Service in the UK. So we're all carrying our phones everywhere. We're carrying, there is this increased reliance on the digital infrastructure, which is one of the problems. We're also very heavily reliant on IoT. So I have my smart TV that's connected with my phone, that's connected with my laptop. So this as well, this whole, reliance on IoT also, brings other problems, which we will discuss as we go along. What we're also seeing as a part of the problem happens to be a lot of risk of compromised hardware and software in the supply chain. So you may be very secure at home. You might think, great, I've got a fantastic, antivirus system. I'm fine. I'm really good to go. But maybe the hardware that you're purchasing, the software that you're purchasing could be compromised. And we're seeing that as a growing threat. We're also looking at greater, dark web activities. So if you look at how we interact, it's on the surface web. And then you have a deep web where you have a lot of financial records and all sorts of other things where data is stored. And then you have the dark web where a lot of the criminals are very active, and they use that space to share data and to share, compromised data. And we're seeing a lot of increased dark web activities as well. But most importantly, we are seeing the ways in which hackers are changing the way they work. I've spent about 20 odd years of my life working with hackers, chasing them around the world, spending a lot of time with them. And there's a huge difference between how they used to behave and how they behave now. They've started to get organized. I think we have this problem where we think hackers are one big group. They are not. They are made up of very small, different groups of people. You will have hackers who have no interest in taking your money. So these are only interested in the politics. They might hack into CIA because they want to make a statement. You will have hackers who are interested in arming terrorist groups. So I did a lot of research in India looking at the bombs that were going off and the links between terrorist groups and hackers. So you have those kind of groups as well. And then the one that concerns our audience today are the cyber criminals. Now they are here to take your data and to take your identity. And how do they do that? They do that through social engineering. So most of the attacks, and strangely enough, over the last 10 years, the one thing that's not changed is a mechanism of attack, which is more than 90% using social engineering techniques.
Wow, this is amazing. I wonder how is this work you are doing, chasing all the hackers around the world? My God, I would like to ask another questions. What is social engineering, and why does it account so much for these attacks regarding the actual activities that hackers are doing every day to our companies?
So social engineering is the most common technique. It's a mechanism that's used to gain access to systems. And what is interesting about social engineering is the platform of access doesn't really matter. It could be access through any mechanism. It could be physical, it could be virtual. It's one of the most hardest forms of attacks to defend against, simply because hardware and software cannot stop it, because it has to do with people. So let me give a few examples of the types of social engineering out there. There are techniques called baiting, where you would compromise your own security by clicking on something which is for free. It could be online. You're saying, oh, here is a free pass or free ticket to a certain event, and you click on it. So that's called baiting. There is something called pretexting, where let us say I want to get access into a system, and I would just pretend to be from that place. I would say, oh, I'm from X organization. I'll call up the IT department and say, well, I've lost my address. I've lost my login details. How do I get it? Now there's two-factor authentication, but the ways to even get around two-factor authentication. So that's called pretexting. There is something called tailgating, which was very interesting because I spoke to one hacker and he said he uses tailgating. Now tailgating is, so he went to a place where he knew he wanted access to the company, and he went and he noticed that people were standing in one place and smoking every day. So he pretended to be an employee and he smoked every day with them for 2 months. And then one day he said, oh, I don't have my card, so I can't come in. Can somebody let me in? And they let him in. And that's how he got access to all the systems. So that's called tailgating. There are other mechanisms such as scareware, where you have you will click on something because you will get a message saying that your security is out of date, or you have malicious content on your system. So that's called scareware, but they're trying to force you into acting very quickly. There is also, now this is a very interesting, but there's something called water holing. Now, water holing is very interesting and it's becoming very popular because this is a technique where, where hackers look at, where do the employees of the companies go? Now, there was one example where, you have people from one company who were all going to a particular restaurant and they were looking at particular restaurant menus. So when the hackers realized that, okay, all of them are getting the food from this particular restaurant, they then decided to hack into the restaurant menu. And through that, they were able to attack the company and get access. So there's so many different techniques. And there are other techniques as well, like called wishing, which is through the voice, through phone messaging. And very recently, we are looking at attacks, social engineering attacks that are led by AI as well. Later on, I can give you an example, if you like, of how AI-led attacks are growing as we go along.
Great, Mira. And in this today, we are very interconnected in the ecosystem of all the organizations. And also we are breaking all the barriers regarding the companies. How can remote work make the problem worse? Taking in consideration that a lot of employees took very hard the bring your own device to the companies. This bring your own device was a thing to help companies and to help people. But how is this making a bigger problem? How is this new way of working impacting the companies today?
Right, that's a really good question. Now, I think if we look at the number of people from across the planet, like we said, who are working online, that's really gone up in recent times, and it's more than 40% in most countries. And I think that's bringing up a lot of psychological issues. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of isolation, anxiety, emotional issues. And people who are working from home, we're spending so much of our time, including, I'm sure I met you, me, and most people who are using any form of the internet, we're spending so much of our time online that we're likely to use breaks to surf the web. We're likely to then take those short breaks by doing something we think that gets us away from work. It's not a bad thing, but it just means that our exposure becomes greater and greater. So rather than talking to your colleague in the office near the water cooler, you're now spending more time online and away from and surfing the web or looking at certain things, and that increases the risk. This also means that, and I'm actually very keen to hear from the audience later on, if what is their experience of working from home, because I think different people would have different takes on this. I'm kind of curious to know, how do they feel working from home, working in this isolated silos that we're using now. So going back to this, so you have now social engineers, again, going back to social engineering as a technique. And I take that specific technique because it has, it has been used very successfully all the time. And I can give you more examples of how social engineering techniques have been used. So what they do is, so the advantage for social engineers is they will exploit certain situations, like especially COVID. There's so many attacks that have come because of COVID, because you have people looking for information out there. There are people looking for jobs. So you can, so there are social engineers who set up these sock puppet accounts, they're called, where you have fake accounts set up to scam people out of jobs. I can show you fake websites where it's so difficult to spot that it's fake. It's almost impossible. and they kind of set up these web pages. They quickly scam people, take away the details, and then disappear. And I work with the Interpol, I work with the UK police. It's almost, this is such a difficult task for any police force, because it needs, a lot of attention, needs a lot of resources, which the police really don't have. And we're also seeing attacks. So social engineering during this time also comes through any text messages. So when you're tired at the end of the day and you've been reading all day, you've been in online meetings, you're more likely to click on something that you shouldn't, simply because of the sheer exhaustion of having read 100 emails online and constantly responding in this virtual frame. So and we're seeing that also hackers are using, a kind of large number of social engineering tools. So some of them also relate to the social media. So a lot of it is what we put out there. So I remember one case of Samsung in the early days of Samsung, where there was one individual who compromised the entire line of Samsung phones because they took a picture of themselves with the latest Samsung phone behind them. And they put this on the social media, and very quickly people realize, oh, that's a new phone, that's not been released as yet. So it compromises things, because sometimes we don't realize the kind of information we have out there. And as companies, that means you have to be ever more careful. It brings into question a lot of issues around identity privacy, because you might say, well, why should, we as individuals should have the freedom to put whatever we want on social media. That's true. But then sometimes we are, without our knowledge, compromising systems. I'm going to give you another example that I came across recently. Perhaps many people in the audience have dogs. Do you have a dog, Ahmed? You do have a dog. Okay. Does your dog have a microchip?
No.
No? Okay.
Not yet.
So in the UK, you can't have a dog without a microchip. It has to have a microchip that identifies data. So what criminals are doing now, they have a scanner, they go around and they scan the dog, and they get the data from the microchip of the dog. And what this does is that this gives details about the dog, the owner, the address. Now, once you have all of this information, what do? You will send an email saying, oh, your dog is ill, or you can send an email, selling dog food for the particular breed of dog, or you could, something around that. So once you have your details, they know your breed of dog, they know so much more about you and your pet. They can do all sorts of things. And they could even pretend to be like from some place where they say, oh, we need more details from you. We need you to do this, and this is your dog's details. So it brings to light some of these issues that we don't often think about. So if you have a pet and you're walking on the road, you don't really think that somebody's had to scan your pet, but that's what's happening. And I want to give you a few more examples of social engineering attacks, at least some kind of major ones that we have seen so far. The largest ever attack using social engineering happened with Google and Facebook. Google and Facebook lost $100 million when they had employees who were, so they had employees who were working with different vendors, and those vendors were submitting bills. You had companies that were, so then there were two Ukrainian individuals who set up a fake company. They knew the companies they were working with, and they sent these fake invoices, and they conned Facebook and Google out of 100 million. And a more recent kind of attack happened in the UK, where you had a UK energy company, and the UK energy company lost 200,000 because somebody rung up and they called it, and they sounded exactly like the boss of the company. So then they lost a lot of money through this. We are also seeing increasingly CEOs being taken to court. I don't know if that's happening in South America, but that's happening in the UK, it's happening in China. A CEO lost 60 million because somebody scammed him using his voice, using how he sounds, and took data. We saw this recently in 2020 with Twitter, where the Twitter account of Barack Obama and some of the very like Elon Musk, they were hacked, and somebody took a lot of bitcoins. They asked them to put bitcoins into a charity, and then they were able to scam people. So it happens every day, and it happens all the time. So Ahmed, if you don't mind, can I share my screen? I just wanted to share one particular YouTube example of a deep fake, because deep fake is using AI, and that's becoming increasingly the mechanism to scam people.
I'm amazed about my pet.
I know, I know. You be very careful. Okay. So this is an example of a deepfake. Is everybody able to view the screen that I've shared?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just going to play this because this actually shows this is a fake video of Barack Obama, and it shows how easy it is. There are tools out there. It takes 5 minutes. You can record my voice today, but please don't do it. And you can actually create a fake person, just using my photograph the way I speak. So I'm just going to show this as one example.
Less than a week since the deadliest mass shooting in American history. And foremost in all of our minds has been the loss and the grief felt by the people of Orlando.
Here's the ground truth video of Obama saying the same words.
Especially our friends who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. I visited with the families of many of the victims on Thursday, and one thing I told them is that they're not alone.
The heart of our method is a recurrent neural network that transforms input audio to a time-varying mouth shape.
My election symbolizes some progress, at least within the small confines.
Hey everybody, today 20 million more American adults know the financial security of health insurance.
Here we go. President Barack Obama. When you giving a speech, make sure you use lots.
Okay. That was just quickly to...
You can hardly notice that it's fake.
Exactly. I know. It's really good. And there's so many websites out there that do this very quickly, and they kind of only charge $5 to $10 for this. So that's a bit scary, because if you think about what can be done with that kind of technology, whom do you know? I know you wouldn't really know whom you're speaking to. You don't know if a video is fake or real. And we are going to see more of these kind of social engineering techniques.
Wow. So my next question will be regarding all these new advances that the bad ones are doing against companies. Is there a solution, Mira? How can we protect the workforce in times of this digital threat in the work environment?
So I've worked with a lot of public sector, private sector organizations, Ahmed, and one of the things that companies don't want to hear is that it needs more, that you need an investment in awareness, in training and policy development. What I hear from many CEOs is, oh, well, we have, antivirus, we have the systems and software in place, but the problem is, from what I've just shown you, that doesn't help, because there's so many ways of tricking individuals that alone does not work. There are also a lot of common pitfalls that we're falling into. There's, a lot of companies offer very generic training. There's lack of policies. There's no need analysis to try and understand the individual needs of employees. How do companies, a lot of companies that I speak to, even in the UK, they don't have a mechanism to measure and evaluate the success of training programs. They think, well, if you offer a one-time training, that is sufficient, and there isn't enough communication and planning and making a business case for cybersecurity.
Okay, this is a great idea. And what do you see as the future trends we are likely to see in a post-COVID world? As you know, this pandemic situation has changed a lot of things in our day-to-day world, but also not only for companies in a good way. It also changed because we are going home to work. And what do we expect to happen after this COVID pandemic situation?
So we're likely to see a number of different trends. We're likely to see that we have always spoken about artificial intelligence as being, this wonderful, tool and kind of techniques for us to use to create an automated world. It's all fantastic, but artificial intelligence has two faces, and we are going to see some of the darker sides, like I've just shown you in that video of what AI can do, and not all of it is positive. We are going to see a lot more automation, and with automation, which is fantastic, it will bring other kinds of problems. We will see that there will be, whether companies like it or not, a focus on cybersecurity. It's happened in South Africa, it's happening in the UK, and most companies around the world by 2030, the CEOs will become liable for cyber attacks, which means they're personally liable. So if something goes wrong, the insurance will not automatically pay out. So you can have cyber insurance, but it doesn't mean if the fault is on the side of the company, the insurance will not pay out. And we are going to see more CEOs become very liable for this. We will see that mobile devices will become a greater target, because a lot of people are using drives like Google Drives, etc., on their phones. And this interconnected IoT devices will become a huge target. 5G, I don't know if that's being rolled out in South America, it's being rolled out in the UK, and that's going to bring its own problems. One of the positives that we will see is that, we need to bridge the cybersecurity skills gap very quickly. There are, so many cybersecurity roles that are left unfilled, and we will see that as a positive, because going forward, there will be no choice but to kind of bridge this gap, and we all have to upskill, in terms of cybersecurity. People who never used Zoom before or used any form of online technology before, in the last year have started using it. So we are seeing that will change. That will change a lot of practices. In terms of, I want to talk a little bit about in terms of what companies can do, because what can they do, given the changes that we're going to see, and given some of the pitfalls that we just discussed, what is then possible? Companies will have to do a lot more in terms of assessment of needs. They need to understand when to train, whom to train, how, where to train, right? Companies will have to identify an audience. They'll have to see the same training. For example, a person who is customer facing should have a very different training program to somebody who's facing suppliers. Or somebody who is working in the IT department will have a very different training need as compared to somebody who works in marketing. So I think that kind of segmentation needs to happen to try and understand what is the target audience, what kind of training do they need, what kind of awareness mechanisms need to be there. How do you benchmark, where your employees are, and what kind of training is needed to take them over and to make it a more secure digital workplace. Also, what is important is to try and understand, what is it that companies want to change? Is it the attitude? Do they want to change an attitude and understanding cyber risk? Do they want to change behavior? And do they want to change knowledge? So these are three very critical components that companies will have to start thinking about.
Wow, this is great. We have heard a lot of doing awareness of people, but you are changing my mindset right now, saying that you don't need to give only awareness. You have to make analyze the activities of each one inside your company to train what they need to know, and just don't start training just because you need to be trained. That's great, fantastic. So do you think that we can have some other takeaways regarding all these topics we have talked today?
Well, in terms of other takeaways, I would say it is to empower staff suspicion. If your staff is suspicious, encourage staff to come to you whenever if they see anything suspicious. They should have the freedom to talk about issues that they're having, whether it's on the mobile phone. There shouldn't be an environment of fear, but an empowerment to say, well, you're free to tell us if you've experienced any problems, or if you think either your phone is compromised or your house laptop is then compromised. They should have the freedom. And I think we need to go beyond the perimeters of the organization. Because of the hyper connectivity now, it's not sufficient to say, well, you're using your university or your workplace laptops, so you're okay. Well, no, because there's a lot more that is connected too. So everything else needs to be secure as well. And that needs to be at the forefront right now. I would also tell companies to test and test often, whether they're using purple teams or red teams. Try and understand where, where the different employees are in terms of training and exposure to, to kind of scams and social engineering attacks. Put cybersecurity training on the agenda. I think this is really important. If it's not been a part of it before, it should be now. There are lots of interesting ideas out there to build staff awareness and to build guidance. One of the things is, everybody gets bored with training, right? And we tell, training, another training day, okay. So how do you make it interesting? How do you make it exciting? There are ways in which you can make it interactive. So at Systel, we do things a bit differently because we want to create a cyber culture, but also make it very, very interactive by creating events where, when you're engaging in something and you have more direct experience, you have this experiential learning, then it tends to stick in our minds a bit more rather than seeing 50 PowerPoint slides. So I think that needs a bit of a change in our overall mindset.
Fantastic. I will also like to complete all the ideas you have gave us and what we have been talking about, and share with the audience something that we can do today to help them with all these topics and things that you have shared with us today. As we know, the framework of NIST is one of the most common, popular, and useful. I will probably switch to Spanish for 2 minutes, okay, Mira, if you don't care.
No problem. Yeah.
Okay. Bueno, como les decía, nosotros hablando ya con Mira de todos estos elementos que nos ha podido aportar, me encantaría hacerles saber que podemos nosotros apoyarles en este proceso en el que necesitamos utilizar marcos de referencia y metodologías 100% probadas. Como saben, NIST es uno de los marcos de referencia por excelencia cuando nosotros estamos buscando encontrar y establecer el alcance y los límites de operación para nuestro sistema de gestión de riesgos en cuanto a ciberseguridad se refiere. Nos encantaría, si ustedes tienen tiempo, que podamos platicar un momento, si ustedes quieren identificar todos los puntos de riesgo, no solamente de riesgo que ustedes ya están sintiendo que está materializándose, todos los riesgos potenciales, que podamos identificarlos, que podamos saber si su organización hoy está en posibilidades de proteger y establecer los puntos de control para todos esos riesgos potenciales, de cómo podemos establecer mecanismos para monitorear comportamientos no autorizados, responder a todos los eventos que podamos tener en un momento determinado. Nosotros podemos apoyarles a establecer estas metodologías y hacer un análisis en sus organizaciones. Ojalá que podamos contar con su comunicación, con su interés para llevar a cabo este proceso. Okay, Mira, so I was just sharing that On Strategy and Systel can happily be able to provide some assessment to the organization in order they can start implementing one of the famous and most popular frameworks for cybersecurity, that is NIST, as you well know about this. So I don't know if you want to complement something regarding this framework to the audience.
Well, the NIST framework is one of the most popular ones, and I think it's well used in the UK as well. And it provides a lot of useful guidance. And if there are, organizations struggling to set up something from scratch, and I think it's especially relevant for SMEs, etc., I think this would be a great starting point. I would encourage everybody to get in touch. I mean, we have some really interesting experience in setting all of this up and working, and we understand both sides. We don't just look at cybersecurity. I can just give a talk on my experience of working with hackers, of spending time with hackers. So I think having seen both sides of the coin, we are able to help.
Great. So I think we are going to switch to the question section. we have already some questions. If you don't have something else to share with us, I will appreciate to go further with questions if you agree.
Sure. Yeah, please.
Okay, the first question we have here is, are there, is the small and medium companies at risk too, even if they do not have a strong cybersecurity culture? This is something very interesting. People inside the companies or CEOs thinks, because my company is a small or medium, we are not at risk. What do you think about this question?
Oh my God, I think this is one of the biggest risks, and I speak from experience. So we work with the company, a big data company called K-Metrics. You will see them on our website. They work with the US, with the UK, intelligence agencies. So they don't have a very strong physical presence, and then they got hacked. So, and when I spoke to, so I know, the CEO of the company very well, Steve, and he said, how did they know we were there? Because we are so under the radar. So although people think that it's a very small family-run company, they've been in business for 40 years, they work with Scotland Yard and different policing agencies, they were not even on the radar. But I think let's not forget, there are always hackers watching different companies, they're always testing systems, they're always watching. So all the SMEs may think that, well, I'm not at risk because I'm a small company. That's actually the opposite. The data in the UK especially indicates that it's the SMEs that are at greatest risk because they don't put in money towards cybersecurity. So because they don't put in, money towards setting up, cybersecurity policies, training, awareness, they have a stronger risk, and they're more likely to get attacked. So it's a vicious cycle. I don't know if that answers the question. I hope it does.
Yeah, great, very good. I also have another question here. Can you give some more information regarding the two-factor authentication, please?
Okay, so the two-factor authentication. So what we are seeing of late is that, although you have two-factor authentication, there are companies that are able to bypass that. They're able to clone SIMs, and they're doing this through bypassing certain systems and getting information directly from your software vendors, these companies that offer you these internet services. So one has to be very careful because, and this particular technique is called SIM cloning. So we're seeing this happen. This is quite recent. So although you think you're very secure, I think it was in the news a couple of days ago that it was in the news today that somebody lost $110,000 in the US in Bitcoin through this method. So somebody was able to get access to the phone, used a two-factor authentication, and then were able to access their Bitcoin, virtual accounts where they had stored all their coins. So we are seeing that growing. This is new, but it is a new form of threat.
Great. Thank you. We have another question. It's what suggestion can you give us to give to our partners inside the company to advise our employees to have digital culture and to make them aware of going only inside secure environments?
Oh, wow, that's a very good question, but a very, very tricky one. So how do you advise your people to go into only secure environments? I think in the past, you have a lot of companies that have areas which is very specific to certain people. So in the past, for example, I worked in a supercomputer department in a division where the servers cost were about £5 or £6 million each. So you would be very, very secluded. You need a lot of identification, retinal checks, etc., to enter. That's not always possible for all companies. So the kind of advice that I can give is to ensure that you have a very strong awareness program that's created so that you prevent tailgating, so that you prevent different types of access. I mean, we don't have the time. I wish we did, because I would like to show you live hacks that are going on. So I can connect us to a camera that can actually show you a particular secure area of a US department, but the camera has been hacked and it's been put on Google. So anybody can see it, and you can see the people working that. This is insane. I mean, at this day and age that, so we are seeing that even cameras can be hacked. So one has to be very careful to understand this combination of physical and virtual threats, and AI coming into the picture would take that to a very different level. But happy to take this conversation further.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, was mostly because the person that made Ricardo the question was saying that inside their company, they have all the controls, but a lot of people today is working at home, and you cannot prevent people to going into unsecure and unsafety places when you are not controlling their perimeter, when you are not controlling their devices because they're in a home office work. Okay, this is increasing the issues and the problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just to kind of add to that, and like I said, when you throw AI in the mix, when you put in that with IoT, with AI, I think we are going to see more of these attacks going forward. And the solution is, again, to constantly keep the awareness up to date and do different things to make security a very important part of employees' everyday lives.
Okay, and this is the next question. It's almost linked to this one, because it says, most staff at my company finds training very boring. How can we change this? How can we make people want to go into the training sessions? How can we make people like to be trained and ask for training if they are not feeling comfortable with the level of knowledge they have today?
So I think the training word has always been associated with something that you have to do to tick a box because it relates to policy. I think in the UK, we are quite strict because we have something called GDPR. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's the Data Protection Act that came in the EU. So it's very tightly governed, which means that every employee has to have training and every organization has to tick that box that they have had GDPR training. Now, because of that, people do it as a chore because they have to. But rather than that, I would say there are ways in which one can make it fun and make it interesting. There are ways of having sandpit events where they experience a real attack. They kind of experience what is it like to face one of these scam attacks if they've not had that experience in the past, and to keep them exposed to different types of attacks coming in. So maybe whether it's a newsletter or it's creating something new, giving them access to certain labs. Now at Sistel, we have access to about 400 labs, and a lot of these labs can be shaped and changed to, make to sort of encourage staff to have that kind of experiential learning where they where they're immersed in that environment, so they learn a lot better and it's fun and they kind of work as a group rather than doing training alone, sitting in front of your computer again.
Great, yeah. I have another question here. Is there any recommendation that how we have to treat our partners inside our company that have they have provoked a cyber attack? What do we do with somebody inside the company that had not followed the policies and has put the company into a risk?
Right. No, that's a difficult one, and I think a lot of that. So when if something like that happens, I think we have to take a step back and think what was not in place for that particular individual. What is the role that the individual was in? I mean, I don't believe in the whole punishment or hall of shame kind of a thing, because some companies do that. They have a hall of shame where if somebody exposes a company, their name goes up on the site as somebody who has exposed a company. I'm not a fan of that approach. I think we need a more collective approach. So if that happens within the organization, that person has clearly either been in a situation, which could be a psychological situation, where they accidentally they clicked on the link, or it could be that they have not had that awareness training in place. So, which is why I said it's not just about a generic training program, but what is the level of awareness of individuals? It's time we start looking at cybersecurity from an individual perspective rather than a collective organizational perspective. So I think in this case, it's about having the conversation with an individual to say, What happened there? Is it something that we have missed giving you? And how do we empower that individual further to ensure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, great. Yeah, this is very good because I think we are all having an extra stress working on this pandemic situation. In addition of all this changing environment and all these problems we are facing with our health, our family, and everything, also we have to add the cyber risk in our company, and then we have to bring this cyber risk to our house because we're working from home. So I like your answer because we have enough stress today in our companies to add a big list of punishment list if you are in a risk.
Agree
Okay,
yeah.
so we are very happy with your answers. I think we are running out of time. We will like to know if we have some questions. We will send it to you and you will answer. We have some. We will send it to you, and we would like to invite everyone to our next cyber coffee time session, and we are expecting to see you soon in a next session, Mira. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the audience for sharing the time today. Thank you, everyone.
And we appreciate you answer, please, for the audience. We are appreciating your answers in the survey at the end of this webinar, because this will help us to know if you like the sessions, if you would like to have some specific topics. Please don't forget to contact us on www.onstrategy.com/cybersecurity. It's going to be a pleasure to listen for your questions and any issue you would like to share with us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye.